Good afternoon, everyone. We are at 2 o'clock, and so we're going to go on ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Tina Lewandowski, and I'm the Director of Engagement here at the ADRC. Thank you very much for attending. Today, we have a presentation from Keri Cox, a glimpse into research, the cohort study here at the ADRC. Keri has 2 years of experience working directly in research and over 4 years of experience working in the neurology field. She's passionate about research and working towards providing better treatment and resources to both caregivers and individuals with dementia. She holds the hope that someday we will have Alzheimer's disease survivors. Just a friendly reminder, please keep your microphones on mute. And if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them in the chat. We will leave time at the end of the presentation for Keri to answer your questions. As always, we will have the recording available on our website within 24 hours. Keri, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So I'm going to go on ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tina. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Can't see your screen yet, but we can hear you. There, and we can see your screen now.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, Tina, and everyone for having me here. So as Tina said, I am a coordinator on our clinical cohort study here at the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So today I just kind of want to give you a glimpse into research and specifically into the clinical cohort study and kind of what it looks like to be a participant in research. So today, just kind of an outline of what I'll go through is I'm going to give you guys a background of the clinical cohort study, kind of tell you about what some of our goals are on the study, give you an overview of what the clinical cohort study is, what it looks like to be a participant, what some of our study visits look like, and then of the future of the clinical cohort study and kind of our goals that we're working towards. And then hopefully I won't go too long, so we'll have some time for questions at the end. So background of the clinical cohort study, the KU's Alzheimer's Disease Research Center is actually one of 37 nationally recognized Alzheimer's disease research centers across the United States. Each of these research centers are funded by the National Institute on Aging, and each research center has its own clinical cohort study, and we all collect the same data. So the National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center puts together these uniform data sets and distributes them to each center that has a clinical cohort study. And then in turn, we collect that data and we submit that data back to the National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center, or NAC, as you might hear it referred to. This here is just kind of a map, and it shows you where each of the different nationally recognized Alzheimer's disease research centers are. So you can see we're there, the little jaybird is there, that's us. And our hope is to continue to kind of expand and eventually have Alzheimer's disease research centers in each and every state. A little background about the clinical cohort study here at the KU's Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. The clinical cohort study here contributes to both local, regional, and national efforts. So we collaborate with a lot of local KU investigators or scientists outside of even just the Alzheimer's research department. We collaborate with a lot of other doctors and other departments as well. At a regional level, we collaborate with a lot of different investigators in the greater Kansas City area at different hospitals, different research centers, and different universities. And then at a national level as well, as I talked about in the previous slide, the National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center, one thing that they do is after we submit data to them, they're able to provide that data to different researchers. And most of the times this is to researchers who might not have the funding or the resources to be able to perform these studies. So they're able to get data and study that data from the National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center. So we contribute at all these different levels to kind of help better understand memory, healthy aging, and Alzheimer's disease. The clinical cohort study is the largest study conducted here at the KU ADRC, and we're also the longest running study as well. So we started enrollment in August of 2011. We're currently on our 11th year of enrollment. You'll kind of see at the side here, I put our staff. So I'm just going to quickly highlight the staff that work on this study. So our principal investigator is Dr. Burns. A lot of you might be familiar with his name, but he's also the one of the directors of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at KU. I myself am a coordinator, and then Ellen Umke is another coordinator I work alongside of. And then we have 3 research assistants, Liz Tran, Gabby Cortez, and Mia Smith. And they're all just really great group to work with. I really enjoy working with them. At the bottom, this mission here, it's not one just specific to the clinical cohort study. It's kind of one that we embody at all of the ADRC, but it's to improve the lives of patients and families with Alzheimer's disease by eliminating the disease through its treatment and prevention. So this is a goal we're constantly striving and working towards. Then some of our individual goals within the study, we want to provide a sustainable environment that stimulates human-based research on Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, and also just the aging process as well. We want to speed up research. As many of you might be aware, or maybe you're not aware, research is not always a fast-moving process. So one of our goals is really to speed up that process, drive innovation, and promote new discoveries, specifically within Alzheimer's treatments and prevention. We want to be able to provide meaningful data, biological samples through blood samples or cerebral spinal fluid samples, brain images through MRI and PET scans, and other vital information to the local researchers around the Kansas City area. And then lastly, we want to follow a group of participants over time to, again, learn more about dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and the aging process. So one of our big goals is just to look at the aging process in a longitudinal way and just see how the disease progresses over time, or how people age over time. So what are we doing to achieve these goals? These next couple of slides are really diving into what our study is and what we're doing within our study. So the clinical cohort study is a long-term observational study, meaning we don't ask any of our participants to take any investigational medicine, and we don't ask any of them to change anything about their day-to-day activities. Longitudinal or long-term, we plan to enroll up to 600 individuals who are seen annually, meaning we follow them year after year. We follow up and have them come back in each year for as long as they're willing or able to do so. And then just to break that 600 number down a little bit more, that includes 300 individuals with normal cognition, about 150 individuals with mild cognitive impairment, and then about 150 individuals with Alzheimer's disease. Who is eligible for the cohort? So individuals who are 60 plus years and have normal cognition, individuals who are 50 plus years with a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment or probable Alzheimer's disease. And we ask participants to have an available study partner to at least attend at least one visit annually. And this could be someone that we just ask that it's someone who's familiar with the participants' day-to-day activities, can answer questions on their cognition, their mood. And a lot of times it's a spouse, partner, sibling, close family friend who comes with the participants. And then we ask participants to be willing to attend at least 2 study visits annually, and then also a willingness to be contacted for future studies related to brain aging. And next slide is just kind of a snapshot. I call it kind of, instead of a day in the life, a year in the life of a clinical cohort participant. So the first year visits, what they look like is we have 2 annual visits that we do with each of our participants. The first of those is a clinical evaluation with their study partner. At this visit, the participant meets with one of our clinicians who specializes in memory and thinking. And they go through a series of questions just asking about their feelings, their mood, day-to-day activities, their cognition, and they ask the same questions with their study partner. We then collect a set of basic vital signs, pretty similar to what you would have done at the doctor's office, so just blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, and then the clinician also performs a brief physical and neurological examination. The next visit is the memory and thinking evaluation. So this evaluation, the participant goes through a series of memory and thinking tests that kind of just test their cognition. And then we have 4 additional optional visits in the first year that we ask participants to complete as well. The first of these is a blood draw, and part of this blood we bank and we just store for future research, and then part of the blood draw we use for a genetic analysis. The next visit is a lumbar puncture, where we withdraw cerebral spinal fluid, and again we bank that cerebral spinal fluid and we use that towards future research. The next visit is a brain MRI, where they're looking at the participant's structure of their brain and just seeing if that's normal for aging or how that structure relates to Alzheimer's disease. And then the last visit is the neurovascular and exercise test. And this visit is just looking at participants' vascular systems and also their physical activity as well. And then again, as I mentioned, we do an annual follow-up with all of our participants, so they come back in yearly. And it's going to be not as much as the first year, but looks similar to the first year. So again, they'll complete those 2 annual visits, the clinical evaluation with their study partner. They'll meet with the clinician that specializes in memory and thinking, go through questions asking about their mood, day-to-day activities, cognition, and then again, get those basic vital signs done and a physical and neurological examination. And then that second annual visit, again, is the memory and thinking evaluation, where they'll just complete the same set of memory and thinking tasks to test their cognition. And then we also ask participants to repeat the blood draw every other year. So they complete the blood draw at their first year visit, their third year visit, 5th year, and so on. And then we just bank that blood that we collect and we are able to use it for future research. And then down at the bottom, real quick, I just wanted to point out that by being in the clinical cohort study, participants may have the opportunity to participate in other Alzheimer's Disease Research Center sponsored research projects. So what does that look like? As I mentioned multiple times, one of the big things with the clinical cohort study is just supporting other researchers. And we're able to support researchers through supporting different brain aging projects. So we have a lot of times researchers come to us and they just don't have the resources or the funding to be able to perform the research that they're wanting to. So they're able to utilize the cohort study for that. So some of our current clinical cohort supported studies that we have are all options that our current participants or any participants in the clinical cohort study can opt into or have the opportunity to also consent to do these as well. So I'll just quickly kind of run through and show you what our current ones are. The first one that we have is our brain donation program. So participants who are in the clinical cohort study have the opportunity to consent into this brain donation program as well. And when they pass, they're able to donate their brain for us to use for future research. And a lot of times this is participants express that they love being able to do this because it's a way for them to continue to give back to research once they've passed. And then another thing is brain autopsy right now is the only way to definitively diagnose Alzheimer's disease. So this through the brain donation program, participants' families will receive a autopsy report from that. Next, we have our Alzheimer's gut microbiome project. So this is a 2-time point stool collection that we collect from the participants. And then we're just looking at the gut bacteria within their, or the microbiome within their gut. So the bacteria within their gut to see how that relates to aging or Alzheimer's, or if it plays a role in the development of any neurological disorders at all. Then there's the fluorodexoglucose PET scan, and this is a one-time PET scan that's looking at the brain activity and how participants or people's brains use sugar. So studies have shown that as people's cognitions decline, the way that their brain activity and how well their brain uses sugar declines as well. So this PET scan kind of takes a look at that. We have our genes and energy metabolism study. This is a one-time blood draw where we collect blood from our participants. And then within that blood draw, they're just looking at two different things. Mainly, they're looking at the participants' genetic makeup and to see how whether different genetics influence a person to be more or less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. And then looking at a person's metabolism or how well their cells use the energy within their body to see if that makes a person more or less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as they age. And then we have our mitochondrial health index for Alzheimer's disease. Again, this is another one-time blood draw with a gait speed test as well. Within that blood draw, they're looking at the protein foldings within a person's brain. And as people age and if people develop Alzheimer's disease, sometimes they see an increase in those foldings. So they're just kind of looking at that and comparing that to the participant's gait speed test. So studies have shown that a person who has cognitive decline, that their gait speed will decline as well. So they take that blood draw and that gait speed test, and they are able to kind of compare that and look at that. And then another one of our supported brain aging projects is one I kind of want to highlight. And this one is called the acceptability of disclosing Alzheimer's disease and related dementia biomarkers. So for those who aren't familiar, a biomarker is a measurable biological marker found in blood or other bodily fluids or tissues that can be a sign of a disease or health condition. So researchers are really kind of taking a look at these different biomarkers and seeing if there are specific biomarkers related to Alzheimer's disease and how that can help us better diagnose Alzheimer's disease. So participants within the cohort who decide to consent to this study, they can choose to receive more feedback on some of the visits that they complete within the first year of the clinical cohort study. They meet with a clinician to review an individualized brain health report that we put together based off of the visits that they completed with their first year of the cohort. And this report just kind of adds more pieces or kind of reveals more pieces to the complex puzzle of understanding brain health. So the brain is a very confusing thing and very hard to understand. So this report can kind of just shed a little bit more light on an individual's brain health. And then this information may reveal ways for a person to improve their overall brain health. And it also can be a really helpful way to start conversations with your personal physician about memory change. So participants who decide to do this study, they could take that brain health report that they receive, and they could take it back to their personal physician, and this kind of opens the door for them to talk about anything, if they're having memory changes, or just ways that they can kind of better improve their overall health. So why should you join our study? Well, it's a yearly checkup for your brain at no cost. When our participants come in for their yearly clinical evaluation, they meet with that clinician that specializes in memory and thinking. They're able to get a checkup for their brain, both participants who have no memory impairment and participants who have some sort of memory impairment get some feedback yearly from the clinician. So just a good way to kind of check on your brain and see how it's doing. Again, as I talked in the last slide, participants have the opportunity to receive that additional biomarker information from their first year visits. And then you're just helping to stimulate new research and support scientists, both locally and nationally. And then also, lastly, you're joining the fight to end Alzheimer's. None of our research that we do could be done without any of our volunteers or participants. And this is just a really cool way to join the fight to end Alzheimer's. And then some of our future goals within the clinical cohort study. So we want to continue to grow and build the cohort to support future researchers. We want to continue to gather well-rounded, meaningful data. And I've talked a lot about us supporting researchers through our resources. And right now we have a lot of really good resources, but we want to be able to expand on that and grow our availability of resources. So in the future, we can support more researchers and hopefully speed up research. And then another thing that we're really kind of pinpointing on is more outreach and recruitment to underrepresented minorities. We're doing this through providing better resources and outreach within the Latino, African American, and rural communities. These communities are vastly underrepresented in research, and we can't just cure Alzheimer's for one set of people. We have to be able to cure Alzheimer's for everyone. So really just providing more opportunities for these people from these communities to get involved in research so we can have a well-rounded, meaningful data. And then lastly, we are working on starting a Down syndrome cohort study. So many people are probably not familiar or know a lot about it, but individuals with Down syndrome are at a much higher chance to develop Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease is actually one of the leading causes of death for individuals with Down syndrome. So we are just really passionate about kind of diving into the research world. There's not a lot of research, Alzheimer's research in the Down syndrome community right now. So that is something that we are hopefully going to kind of start and get going within the near future. So if you are interested in joining our study, sorry, Tina, I should have put like a little contact thing on here, but Tina maybe can give you a number or a link to reference. We would love to talk to you about it if you have any questions. That was everything I had.
Thank you very much, Keri. I appreciate the backgrounds that you gave on our ADRC Center, as well as the background of the clinical cohort, what the cohort consists of, and those benefits for joining in the future. We've got a couple of questions in the chat already. So we've got a person who's participating in a NICE study. Is that one of the cohorts that you're referring to? So do you want to talk a little bit about the cohort in NICE?
Yeah, NICE is not one of with this cohort. We do have participants who are co-enrolled in the clinical cohort study and the NICE study. And I think they're very similar with some things that they collect, but this NICE would be a different study from this one.
Great. And then we've got another question here about would the FDG PET show the amyloid in the brain? I understand there's an amyloid PET that can be done by the ADRC.
So the FDG PET scan does not actually show the amyloid within the brain. That's not something that it looks at. We have done in the future an amyloid PET scan with the clinical cohort study, and we have done in the past amyloid PET scan, and in the future there may be an opportunity for us to collect amyloid PET scans again, but the FDG PET scan mainly just looks at a person's brain activity, not the amyloid.
All right, and then we've got a couple questions about distance from ADRC. So who can participate in the study? Where do they go to participate?
Yeah, so for us individually or for any of the national ranked centers, if you look up the National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center website, they will have links to each of the centers. Another good way is just to get on Google and to Google an Alzheimer's disease research center around you, and they're going to probably pop up pretty easily for the ones that are within the area, or if you have a specific area in mind.
So great. And so we do have people in rural communities that drive to our location here in Fairway to participate. Oftentimes they utilize it as an excuse to spend time with family if they have family in the KC area. So we do have people who definitely come in from further places, and we're working on getting our cohort up and running at our KU Wichita location. So I think that'll be great for some of the people who are further west as well. And you were talking about other ADRCs, Keri, and how you had that slide of how we have them all across the nation. Ed Keller was wanting to know what is the national title for these studies. They would be interested in contacting one of the Northern California studies.
I don't know if I'm very good at answering that question. So I'm trying to understand, wanting to just know what the name of the study center is in the Northern California areas.
Well, I think they're all ADRCs. Would this be
Yes.
the clinical gov site? I think lists all of the studies.
Yep. So each nationally ranked center is going to be an Alzheimer's disease research center. So a good way of finding one, again, is just hopping on Google and looking up a National Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in Northern California. We could possibly provide a list of the different research centers. I think we have that somewhere. So if that's something, Tina, I could get to you. And we could provide that. But again, Google is a good way. And if you just Google, each of them are Alzheimer's disease research centers. So that'll be a good way to find it. But I also could provide a list if that's helpful too.
And then all of those centers do have this cohort study. Sometimes they're a little bit different as far as there's additional sub-studies that people can participate in, but they all have a baseline of similar data that they collect and they share.
Yes.
So if you're in another state or somewhere else that's one of those are closer, you can definitely participate there as well. All right, other questions? Oh, and Kelsey put in a link for people. Thank you, Kelsey. Does anyone have any other questions for Keri? All right. Well, Keri, thank you so much for your time and for sharing more information about the clinical cohort with us. I do want to just remind everyone, I think, Keri, you mentioned this, but I want to remind everyone again, all of those study visits and all of the things that happen in those, that is not at any cost. So I do want to make sure that people are aware of that. Oftentimes these things can get pretty expensive, and I do want to make sure people are aware that all of those tests and things that you go through in the cohort are not at any cost. So want to be sure to disclose that with you. All right, Keri, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today and sharing this information with us. We will have our weekly webinar next Thursday at 2 o'clock. More information about that presentation can be found on our website under events or in your My Alliance Monday email. And you can always visit us at kualzheimers.org and find the information there, as well as this recording will be available on our YouTube channel under weekly webinars. And if you have any questions that we didn't get to in the chat, or you have some more specific questions you want to ask, you can always email us at myalliance@kumc.edu. I hope to see everyone next Thursday. I hope you're enjoying the lovely weather we've been given this fall. So have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care, and thanks, Keri.
Thank you. Bye-bye.